They are among the most terrifying of Sauron's beasts. Great winged creatures, these hellhawks would become the steed of choice for the Nazgûl. Bearing their dark masters, they would bring terror from the skies. Today on Nerd of the Rings, we cover the fell beasts of the Nazgûl. While the fell beasts are mysterious creatures and we don't know their exact origin, we are given clues. We know that, like his master before him, Sauron clearly saw the value of being capable of aerial battle, in addition to aerial travel. Where Morgoth would create the winged dragons that debut in the War of Wrath, Sauron brings about the fell beasts that would be revealed during the War of the Ring. After a journey that began in secrecy, the Ringwraith's horses are killed when they are swept away by the river Bruinen. Forced to return to Mordor on foot, Sauron's servants turn to their more speedy and deadly steeds. The first appearance of a fell beast, though we don't know it at the time, is on the night of February 23rd, when the Fellowship is making its way down the Anduin River after their stay in Lorien. A dark shape, like a cloud, and yet not a cloud, for it moved far more swiftly, came out of the blackness in the south and sped towards the company, blotting out all light as it approached. Soon it appeared as a great winged creature, blacker than the pits in the night. Suddenly the great bow of Lorien sang. Shrill went the arrow from the elven string. Frodo looked up. Almost above him, the winged shape swerved. There was a harsh croaking scream as it fell out of the air, vanishing down into the gloom of the eastern shore. The sky was clean again. There was a tumult of many voices far away, cursing and wailing in the darkness. And then, silence. Neither shaft nor cry came again from the east that night. It's not until Chapter 3 of The Two Towers that we get a hint that Legolas had indeed shot down the mount of a Nazgûl, and that these beasts were far greater than mere means of travel. The orc Ugluk says,
"What's happened to your precious Nazgûl? Has he had another mount shot under him? Now if you brought him along, that might have been useful, if these Nazgûl are all they make out."
Nazgûl, Nazgûl, said Grishnak, shivering and licking his lips, as if the word had a foul taste that he savored painfully.
"You speak of what is deep beyond the reaches of your muddy dreams, Ugluk," he said. "Nazgûl, all they make out. One day you'll wish you had not said that, ape," he snarled fiercely. "You ought to know they're the apple of the great eye. But the winged Nazgûl, not yet, not yet. He won't let them show themselves across the great river yet. Not too soon. They're for the war and other purposes."
2 chapters later, Gandalf would confirm to Legolas directly the victim of his shot, and that the Nazgûl would no longer resort to mere horses in the War of the Ring. "The winged messenger," cried Legolas. "I shot at him with the bow of Galadriel above San Gabir, and I felled him from the sky. He filled us all with fear. What new terror is this?"
"One that you cannot slay with arrows," said Gandalf. "You only slew his steed. It was a good deed, but the rider was soon horsed again, for he was a Nazgûl, one of the 9, who ride now upon winged steeds."
Chronologically, Frodo, Sam, and Gollum are the next to experience a Nazgûl on its fell steed as they pass through the dead marshes. Then Frodo and Sam, staring at the sky, saw it come, a small cloud flying from the accursed hills, a black shadow loosed from Mordor, a vast shape, winged and ominous. It scudded across the moon, and with a deadly cry, went away westward, outrunning the wind in its fell speed. They fell forward, groveling heedlessly on the cold earth, but the shadow of horror wheeled and returned, passing lower now, right above them, sweeping the fen, reek with its ghastly wings. And then it was gone, flying back to Mordor with the speed of the wrath of Sauron. And behind it, the wind roared away, leaving the dead marshes bare and bleak. Frodo and Sam got up, but Gollum lay on the ground as if he had been stunned. They roused him with difficulty, and for some time he would not lift his face, but knelt forward on his elbows, covering the back of his head with his large, flat hands.
"Wraiths!"
he wailed.
"Wraiths on wings! The precious is their master. They see everything, everything. Nothing can hide from them. Curse the white face, and they tell him everything. He sees, he knows. Gollum.
Later, they experience a winged Nazgûl once again, but this time it was on other business. Frodo, Sam, and Gollum had not gone far before they felt once more the fear that had fallen on them when the winged shape swept over the marshes. They halted, cowering on the evil-smelling ground, but the menace passed, high overhead, going maybe on some swift errand from Barad-dûr. Gandalf and the three hunters would go on to assist the Rohirrim in the Battle of Helm's Deep, and then come to Isengard to parley with Saruman. However, on their way back to Edoras, they would once again feel the dread of the winged Nazgûl. While reading the book, this comes before Frodo and Sam's moment. However, we discover this is actually the same Nazgûl, nearing the end of his journey. At that moment, a shadow fell over them. The bright moonlight seemed to suddenly cut off. Several of the riders cried out and crouched, holding their arms above their heads, as if to ward off a blow from above. A blind fear and a deadly cold fell on them. Cowering, they looked up. A vast winged shape passed over the moon like a black cloud. It wheeled and went north, flying at a greater speed than any wind of Middle-earth. The stars fainted before it. It was gone. Gandalf would face off against what Baragond of Gondor calls Hellhawks, as Faramir is making his escape back to Minas Tirith. But now the dark swooping shadows were aware of the newcomer. One wheeled towards him, but he raised his hand, and from it a shaft of white light stabbed upwards. The Nazgûl gave a long wailing cry and swerved away, and with that the four others wavered, and then rising in swift spirals, they passed away eastward, vanishing into the lowering cloud above, and down on the Pelennor, it seemed for a while less dark. The fell beasts we meet in The Lord of the Rings have beaks and claws. They are featherless and have bat-like wings. It is hinted that their heads are somewhat bird-like. The most physical description we get of these winged monstrosities comes later in The Return of the King. The great shadow descended like a falling cloud, and behold, it was a winged creature. If bird, then greater than all other birds, and it was naked. And neither quill nor feather did it bear, and its vast pinions were as webs of hide between horned fingers, and it stank. A creature of an older world maybe it was, whose kind, lingering in forgotten mountains cold beneath the moon, outstayed their day, and in hideous Eyrie bred this last untimely brood, apt to evil. And the Dark Lord took it, and nursed it with fell meats, until it grew beyond the measure of all other things that fly, and he gave it to his servant to be his steed. It is this dreadful description of the winged shadow that precedes Theoden's fateful encounter with the Lord of the Nazgûl. And one aspect that comes up in many of these quotes is the stench of the fell beasts, a trait that understandably wasn't communicated as strongly in the films as the fear they inspire. The Witch King of Angmar rides his foul steed into the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, and shoots Theoden's horse Snowmane with a dart, crushing the king. It is in this moment that Éowyn defends her dying uncle, and with a great swing of her sword, decapitates the winged terror of Mordor. Once again, Frodo and Sam witnessed the flight of a Nazgûl, but this time it was not seeking for the ring, or on a mission of Sauron's, but delivering tidings to the Dark Lord. And then they saw a shape, moving at great speed out of the west. At first, only a black speck against the glimmering strip above the mountaintops, but growing, until it plunged like a bolt into the dark canopy and passed high above them. As it went, it sent out a long, shrill cry, the voice of a Nazgûl. But this cry no longer held any terror for them. It was a cry of woe and dismay, ill tidings for the Dark Tower. The Lord of the Ring-Wraiths had met his doom. The Winged Terrors are unleashed once again at the Battle of the Black Gate. However, the Great Eagles would also come to the battle, bearing down upon the Nazgûl. In that moment, a terrible call emanated from the Dark Tower, for Frodo had claimed the One Ring for his own, and Sauron was now aware the ring was at Mount Doom. The winged Nazgûl move with all speed to Orodruin. However, they are too late. The ring is destroyed when Gollum slips into the fiery depths of the mountain, and in the ensuing eruption, the Nazgûl and their steeds are destroyed, never to return. We know now what happened to the winged beasts, but what of their origin? This could be an interesting theory video for another day, but I want to hear what you think. Were they possibly some descendant of dragons? Some have wondered if they could be eagles, mutilated into foul beasts by the Dark Lord. Or are they indeed some other dreadful creature entirely, twisted by Sauron into their final monstrous form? Let me know what you think in the comments. As always, I want to say a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters who make this channel possible. Tom DeBombadil 19, Listen Me the Cinda, Mandu Pandu, Andrew Carlisle, The Mighty Mim, Team Weasel, Sky Carcass, Slidebelts, Dane Ragnarsson, Salim Rahman, Zetrock, Berto Berg, Grand Strategy Nerd, Graham Derricott, The Dark-Haired One, Wyland, Michael Wu, and Debbie. If you enjoyed the artwork in this video, check out the artists in the description and purchase prints of their great work for yourself. Thanks so much for watching and subscribing, and we'll see you next time on Nerd of the Rings.